play back and forth to create a balance as America goes forward. It's like the left tire and the right tire. Either both need each other, they rely on each other, and together they keep the car going down the road straight and make some real progress. So that's one of the ways I think about the parties. Sometimes and even now in a crazy time like this, which is just great because I think I may have said this before. So I was in law school when the hanging Chad lawsuit situation happened. And I had one of the professors in my professor who's involved with one of the case, behind the scene. And then I graduated and, the thing kept going and things of that nature. But talking about that, this is just a crazy time legally. And I think somebody said the other day, a majority of the Supreme Court worked on that case. And I didn't know that. They were involved as law clerks or whatever they may have been doing in their careers. Right. But they had some, 2 or 3 of them actually decided the case. And they were saying that the majority of the other ones worked on the case either from one side or the other side in some capacity. So they remember this very clearly when America faced this issue before. But we had this case recently this week. And let's start with that, talking about how we get this case first, Professor. Can you explain from the Republican side, how we get this case in the kind of, because I think if I'm not mistaken, this is the Texas lawsuit against Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Wisconsin. Right. Which I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, actually, Georgia wasn't. I thought it was just the 4 swing states. Georgia was
the 4 swing. It was the 4. So Georgia was not. Okay. So I thought that was interesting. Give me the perspective behind. There's only fraud in Democratic states, so let's sue them.
Right. So and thank you for that, and I'm glad you deferred to me about the fraud that is always in Democrat states, especially those states. So let's start there. I mean, back in early, I want to say it was maybe October. All this hype about the mail-in ballots. We know there's no dispute about what's going on in Georgia. And the reason why I think that the Republicans are so up in arms is we saw it coming. President Trump talked about...
So tell me hold on. So let's not be presumptuous. Okay. What is your perspective of what's going on in Georgia?
The consent, the consent decree, whatever it was, I think it was the consent decree that Stacey Abrams put in place when she, according to many Democrats, when she was out beating the pavement, registering voters and blah, blah, blah. That was the piece of this puzzle, this election puzzle that we can't control for. So what's different about this election is the sheer number. We all talked about it. There are 331 million people in the United States, 151 million voted, something like
outstanding.
That. Right. We say that's outstanding, but is that really true? Because at this point, what we do know, even with that, someone on Twitter, hey, they did a recount and Joe Biden got 120 extra votes, which means nothing. Even if Trump got it, means nothing. But the point is they're still finding ballots, and there's 6,000, no dispute. This is not conspiracy theory in Michigan when they found out that 6,000 votes were flipped from Biden to Trump, from Trump to Biden. But so to get back to the lawsuit, I didn't see this Texas lawsuit because we on the right, you don't really follow us on Twitter. We on the right are really holding out for what Sidney Powell says she's doing. And she has all this evidence, and she termed it the Kraken. And that's where I've been putting, my hope. I mean, I'm looking at what Rudy Giuliani is doing with he and Jenna Ellis. And I agree with you, and not because you said it, but the affidavits just weren't doing it for me. And every time Rudy, did a press conference and we have 1,000 sworn, I'm like, but that's not going to overturn an election. I don't even believe that. And I'm just your average Joe. So I wasn't buying into it, but a lot of the Republicans were. So this Texas lawsuit to me was like, oh, man, this sounds great. I'm not a legal person, but it sounds great. So I had to do a bit of research. How did this get straight to the Supreme Court? Because I was hoping Trump, even as a private citizen, but just the weight of who he is, could get his cases, i.e. Rudy's cases, could somehow be fast-tracked to SCOTUS. And that just hadn't been the case. So when Texas lawsuit was this I think it said that the Supreme Court had immediate jurisdiction because it's
Correct.
one state challenging another state. And then it made
Correct.
sense like, oh, there's no circuit court for that. It has to go. So, what even you just acknowledged, just the sheer number of states that joined, I think 18 in all. And then there was something like 106, 108 House representatives, blah, blah, blah. Then you had people like senators like Ted Cruz, like, hey, look, if we get this before the court, I'll argue it. So all of this is sounding good to Republicans who genuinely feel, see, we don't suspect, we genuinely know that there was massive fraud because Trump couldn't have lost all of those. Even if he lost two of those, the way he lost early, wee hours, this combined effort, just like synchronized swimming. We're going to stop at this time. Things that just didn't happen. So this election had so many things that weren't a part of any other election at one time. Ballots from under the table, people being kicked out, voting machines flipping. So that's why I put so much stock in the Texas case. But then listening to people, both sides, you know, really speak about the chances. Even Jay Sekulow, and that's one that I follow. You know, he's one of Trump's insiders. He only gave it a 5% chance. I mean, it made sense to do it that way because their rationale was because of the voting irregularities, and they weren't really challenging. And for those who are listening, thanks for giving me this brief time to ramble on.
Oh, absolutely. Please. I mean, it's your show.
Those they weren't challenging and trying to get them to turn over the vote directly. From my understanding, the challenge was because of the voting irregularities, because of the changes that were outside of the state legislatures, which has that constitutional right to run the elections in every state, you know,
Every
um,
state.
because judges and secretary of states had their say and they made changes, it gave credence to the lawsuit. Now, everybody on the right was hoping the squad. Now, I'm terming the squad. No, I hadn't seen this, but your Amy Coney Barrett, the newest, Kavanaugh, they just drug you through the dirt. Gorsuch, they didn't do much to him, but, you know, we got a leader. We have Thomas. I mean, we have a squad that could give us the chance. So I was surprised when the three Trump appointees said, no, we're not going to hear it. But then I had to step back because even I thought, like, what's going to really come out of this? Now I'm listening to commentary, and this is the one that I heard that I'm repeating. I always like to say what I hear so people don't think I'm just a puppet here. Something that made sense to me, so I'm repeating it. The Supreme Court didn't want blood on their hands. They actually had to consider what's the ramifications if we vacate these four swing states. Someone mentioned the example being abortion, and I didn't get it. And it took me a minute to think about it. I think the situation they were saying is the same thought that Supreme Court justice should have given when they passed away. What's the ramifications that we have hundreds of millions of babies who are exterminated as a result of Roe v. Wade being law? It's the same thing that's given the pattern of the Democrat base. And here's where I'm pointing fingers. The BLM, the Antifa, those are the violent arms. You can call them peaceful, but peaceful don't blow a window out. Peaceful doesn't attack people in the street. Because the proof in the pudding is before the election, cities were boarding up because they're like, okay, yeah, if Trump wins, it's going to be like it was in 2016. You're not my president. People falling out in the street, pink hats, safe spaces. They didn't want to be responsible for that. And I can't blame them. And I think that made sense. They had to give consideration to what would be the ramifications. So we're not even going to hear the merits. We don't want to hear the case. We think it doesn't have standing to go past that. So I wasn't bothered. I told my wife because she's looking at me at the corner of her eye like, "Oh, are you mad? You mad, bro? You mad, bro? You know, because you lost." And I kept telling her, "I want SCOTUS to weigh in. That's the
Supreme
I have
Court.
respect for the law. I want Supreme Court to weigh in, and whatever they say, I'll go with. I'm okay with it because what came out of this is we know that there was fraud. I'm okay with losing as long as what came out of that loss is." Now you know that we know. We just couldn't prove it, but all eyes are on each one of these states. And Georgia, Brian Kemp, the governor, is scared. He's shaking in his boots because he could not do anything right. He said a lot of things, but he didn't do what he needed to do when he could. Because I'm not going to say state legislatures have the right to run it, but he had some things that he could have done. He could have pushed back against Stacey Abrams, whatever this thing she did. And I don't know much about it, so I may have even misspoken about that. So you can clear that up when you take the floor. But for to be a red state, no one is buying that Joe Biden just won that. You, it's going to be a long time before people get over that. Georgia's going to be that one red state. Because my wife said, "Well, it's blue now," and I argued. I'm like, "Wait a minute. Okay, you're saying it's blue because Joe Biden won, but let's not fool ourselves. Georgia's not a blue state, and we're not going to. You can make that case because you can't say no if Biden carried it by 12,000 votes in the end, but that was such a fraud. So the last thing I'll say, if what Trump needs to do is do exactly what Obama did to him. Because now at this point, we're not speculating on whether or not they spied on him. We know that from the special investigation. We know that now. Now they've dressed it up as to why, and they've all said, well, we know now. Well, if we knew then what we know now, we wouldn't have done it that way. But that's bull. So we know what Obama did. So Trump needs to do the same thing, put a special counsel in place to investigate forensically what happened with these voting systems. Because I think that's the only way you show proof. And Biden would be in a hard place to try to do away with the special counsel that his predecessor put in place. So now, where am I wrong?
We're gonna go all the way back to the premise. The strength of our election system has always been its weakness, and that is that control of the election spirals downward all the way, meaning your local elected supervisory election controls so much of the election. And if that person has a bias or predilection or something, they can easily influence how it comes out. They decide almost exclusively where the polling places go. They decide the staffing. So much of that is there's no control. Now we move up a notch above the supervisory election. You then have the legislature, which gives an overarching, here are the standards that must be met. But how you meet those standards, again, left to the local supervisory elections. So the legislature decides, hey, we want early voting or mail-in voting, and everybody comes together. They figure out the dates for all of that stuff. I know one of the things we have in Florida is under Democratic governors, that's been expanded. Republican governors, that's been contracted. So this issue of manipulating elections, the theory of it is nothing new. That's been around. And pretty much after every election in every state and in every local county, you have some level of dispute over who won, didn't win, all those kinds of things. I'll just say, for example, Hillsborough County, I think we had 3 local lawsuits in Hillsborough County. So that's not an uncommon thing that you have issues that have to be hashed out after an election is over. Now let's move up a notch then to the states lawsuits. Texas versus Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and I think Wisconsin. The unfortunate part is those were targeted at Democratic states. And I don't think the Supreme Court had an issue with getting involved. I just think that even though these people were appointed by Trump somehow, and he always called them his judges, these people still have I think, a very, very strong sense of duty, obligation, and standards. And over time, they seem to be consistent. So just the fact that this issue is one being brought forward by Donald Trump, I don't think got him any favors with the judges.
In fact, it wasn't brought forward by Donald Trump. That was the state of Texas.
I said for Donald Trump. It's clear it was for Donald Trump.
Right.
Let me tell you why I think they really brought this. They brought it because of what happened down in Texas when they had the rally a couple of weeks ago, and the chairman of the Republican Party came down, and she really got uh, heckled by Georgia voters, Republicans who did not feel, they were mad at Kemp, said he didn't fight enough for Donald Trump. They're mad at the supervisor election. That person didn't fight enough for Donald Trump. And in general, these Republicans will say, hey, Republican Party, you've not fought hard enough for Donald Trump. How dare you come back to us now and expect us to support you?
Amen to that.
I think that's why you got this lawsuit. And that's why you got so many Republicans signing on to it in the way that they have, because they're trying to send a message to the rank and file voters who they need that, hey, listen, we're fighting for Donald Trump. I say it's like this. It's like a football team in the fourth quarter, down by 30 points, on its own 20-yard line, calling timeout and saving every minute, trying to run every play they can.
Yeah.
And everybody in the stands knows this is the loss. But what the coach is trying to say to the players is, I'm still fighting. And what the coach is trying to say to the owner is, I'm still fighting. That's what I think this lawsuit is about. It is a message simply to the rank and file Republicans to say to them, we're still fighting for Donald Trump. And that's why they picked those 4 states. They could have picked, more states, because here's the scary thing. What happens if they win? What happens if they win? What happens is the Republicans who did very well in this election suddenly got to go back, all of them, because they're not going to throw like a part of the ballot out. They're going to throw out all the ballots. And that means a lot of Republicans who did well would have to now go back and take another shot at trying to run another election and hope they do as well. And now you talk about being motivated. Man, really would the Democrats be motivated? That's how you know when the outset this lawsuit. And when I looked at some of the information in it, this lawsuit is designed to be dismissed because it never gets to a real issue in Texas that the Supreme Court could resolve with a ruling.
Right. Now, so let me ask you a legal opinion on something that you just said. So because when you looked at it and from your legal perspective and background, you said it didn't have anything really of that's what I'm hearing. So you're saying anything of substance that SCOTUS could go on, right?
Correct. So correct. A remedy that they could actually give the state of Texas based on what they were alleging, based on the parameters of what you can do because they've got to show a damage in Texas.
Right. So with that, and I feel this way, and I just said it. So would you have said the same thing if they had immediately somehow ordered a forensic investigation of these systems? Because it's the systems that they're saying is really the crux of the problem. That's what the Republicans are saying. And I'm agreeing, okay, if that's the case, then do that. All this trying to get someone to swear in and then they get all ghetto as being witnesses, that's not helping anybody. So would you have the same thought if they had forensic proof that there were algorithms that were non-standard? Because they're voting algorithm.
Probably not. No, listen.
You don't think forensic?
Listen, let me tell you, here's my view about elections. They're already flimsy. They're a very flimsy way to decide who is in charge and who isn't. Because at the end of the day, elections are about who's the most popular and who's not. And that has very little to do with who's best to be in charge and lead.
Well, but by that premise, then Trump is the president. Joe Biden is not popular. Who's trying? Why are you guys?
Well, stay me for a minute then. The popularity is the best way I can say it is he got so many more votes.
Well, it goes back to voter fraud.
No. If you take the voting difference in those 4 states and gave it to Trump, it doesn't make up the difference.
But you're referring to the count that's on the books. The count that's on the book is what we're talking about. Of course, that's like doing a recount of fraudulent ballots. That's the
No,
point that we're making.
no. The total number of vote run up in populous states like New York, California, and other states. It's the difference of number of people. I'm just saying
Oh, the
popularity.
number of people. Okay, yeah.
And I'm
The
not,
popular vote.
that's what I'm saying. And that's what a vote shows me. It says who's the most popular.
But you're
So
talking about the popular vote in the elections, and we already
no,
have
no,
it.
no, no, no. I'm not talking about that yet. I ain't got there yet. I'm gonna get there. And here's what I'm trying to say is that democracy is a very tenuous method of running a country already because of its basis on popularity. And that can change at any minute. And if the population decides we don't like someone or we do like someone, that decides how. But so now, the reason I would not support challenging the election is people already doubt democracy as being effective for representation.
Okay.
And what's happening here is I could care less right now about whether or not it's proven or disproven these things about the election. That's
Because your guy
secondary.
won. I bet if Trump had won, you wouldn't have that position.
Well, I did. I mean, I was not in favor of Hillary attacking the election system after the election. Now, there were other investigations that were based on different things. But far as Hillary was concerned, my concern is for Donald Trump to get what he wants in this election, you will almost tear down the democratic structure that we use to elect our leadership. And like you said before, half the country just didn't participate already. Think about that.
Well, the fact
Half
that
said, you know what?
51
I'm
million.
not going to be involved in that mess.
Well, then I don't know the statistics on how many people were of age, because then you have to go with voter age. You know,
but we understand that in America, we've always had this issue that the majority of Americans are like, why do I vote? My life doesn't change. These people are not going to look out for me, whether they're Republican or Democrat. They're fat cats looking out for themselves, trying to get rich, and they're just going to help their buddies. So guess what? I'm going to work today.
You know, I only hear that from Democrats, to be honest. I hear that.
Well, I'll say this. And Donald Trump used that in his run-up because he brought out an electorate that we didn't even know existed. He pulled in so many more people that had never voted round one.
Oh, you're making my point.
Right. He pulled them in, though. He went to these people and said, listen, you racist, you people that are segregationists, you horrible people, you the poorly educated and miscreants and what did Hillary called them? Incorrigibles, deplorables. Yeah. You have a place at my table. Come on in and vote. And they did. They showed up. You know, and the Democrats said,
by an extra 10 million. So however you characterize it, he did something that Joe Biden didn't do.
No. Well, in the first election, but in the second election, Democrats got smart. And they were like, hey,
did it. You're right. They put in mail-in voting. That's
we've always had mail-in voting. I'm sure in the military you voted by mail.
You guys, that's absentee voting. You guys did the mail-in voting, the universal mail-in voting using COVID, scaring people with COVID.
No, there's certain states that have had, Arizona and some states, they've had mail-in voting for years.
I'm not disputing that. We're not disputing that. Because what you're saying as far as a popular vote, you're talking about the popular vote, but you say you hadn't gotten there. By sheer volume, we've always said by sheer numbers, Democrat can win every election. By sheer number, you outnumber Republicans.
We have more registered Democrats in America than Republicans.
So that's always the case in every election by sheer numbers.
Correct.
You guys, and by what you said, California, a Democrat nominee starts off with like 80-something electoral votes. When you get California, you get New York, 70 votes right there. So by sheer numbers, you guys already outweigh. So when you throw in this thing, because you knew Donald Trump was a juggernaut, they knew they couldn't compete with him any other way. Because what the guy can do, and he showed everybody. You use that analogy of football. Donald Trump outworked Biden 10 times over, outworked them. And when you guys are saying he's being irresponsible with the spread, Donald Trump outworked him. He got COVID. Got whatever treatment. Then you guys kept saying, well, he got treatment we didn't get. Forget that. He got sick, got better, got back to work like we do at football. He outworked him and got more votes.
Yeah, but your premise is Biden's increase in votes was because he worked hard. Not Biden, but Trump. He
Right.
didn't work hard, and Joe Biden's increase in
Because he
votes
cheated.
was because of
Of
fraud.
mail-in voting. Right.
Now, if that's the case, though, going back to our initial discussion about the election, you got to have local county supervisors of election involved in that.
Right.
Then you have to have state legislatures involved in that. Then you have to have the level of involvement and participation in that. It's baffling, to accept. But I was getting to the point that for Donald Trump to get what he wants, he has to tear down our system of elections. And that's really what I think is the scary piece to most people, because people don't trust elections already. The world doesn't trust democracy as it is because it's happenstance. Whoever's most popular, here they come. And then we get a guy like, first we get Ronald Reagan, a movie star, he wins. Then we get Donald Trump. He's worse. He's a TV reality personality, and he gets elected. And then people wonder why he looks like a bull in a china shop in the White House, because he is. It's not his natural inclination. Give me one final thought before we go to break, Professor, on the election.
Man, I just I just don't have a final thought. Here's the final thought. Donald Trump's going to take his base with him when he leaves. He's going to be the only president that has more pull than the beloved Barack Obama.
I will say this, because he had that base before he came. Let's do this real quick. We've been at this for a minute. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back on the other side of the show. We're going to drift into some other stuff. Professor, I'm going to let you talk about Hunter Biden and the investigation. We'll get a little bit of that, maybe get an update on Rudy Giuliani being released from the hospital. But listen, you're listening to In Touch News Radio, reality radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after these commercial breaks. See you in a minute.
Been injured, you deserve help from an attorney that knows how to handle your injury claim. This is attorney Clinton Paris from the law office of Clinton Paris. For over a decade, I worked for insurance companies, and now I use that knowledge and experience to help people that have been injured. For a free consultation, call me, attorney Clinton Paris, at 813-413-7924. That's 813-413-7924, or at parislawoffice.com. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt. Offices, Riverview.
This is Mario Andretti. You know me as a race car driver, but I'm also a Meals on Wheels volunteer. I've raced against the sport's biggest personalities, but I've never met more vibrant, amazing people than the seniors served by Meals on Wheels. You can make a difference by dropping off a hot meal and saying a quick hello. So, America, let's do lunch. Volunteer your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
People been saying to your friend, get a different face, and posting on their feed, they're super ugly. The things they say to them online are cruel and they're not true. So tell your friend, I'll stand up for you. Don't worry, I know what to do.
Know someone being bullied online? You can be a witness and make a difference by letting the world know it isn't cool, and by letting your friend know you care. Learn more at eyewitnessbullying.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Slap talk, trap talk, just talk with Madam CJ. Right here on In Touch Radio every Thursday at 7 p.m.
Talk to me, baby.
Trap talk, y'all, on In Touch Radio.
All right, we are back live on In Touch News Radio, reality radio. Everybody can be a star. This is attorney Clinton Paris. I'm one of the co-hosts of Straight Up the Middle. I have with me also here live Professor Tony Seabrook. A spirited opening round, rattling off about the election. But, I love hearing myself talk. My wife sometimes knocks on the bathroom shower and goes, "Who's in there with you?" I go, "It's just me talking to me." So I try not to answer myself. That's the sign of being, you're losing it though. But I would like to say this. First of all, media is the mechanism by which I think the lifeline of communities, and In Touch News is absolutely that. So I encourage everybody. I know you tune into our show, but check out the suite of information, shows, and entertainment that you can find in InTouch News. We're the talk version of the show. There's an internet version as well. There's also a print newspaper that comes out in our local community. I just want to encourage everyone, though, to really support not only InTouch News Radio, but all other radio stations. If you were listening during the break, you heard my commercial that my law firm runs. And I encourage anyone, if you're looking to advertise in the African American community, you're trying to get your message out to a targeted market, I encourage you to contact InTouch News, Tammy and Daryl over there, and discuss with them ways that you can use this medium to improve your business or share messages. We're going into the new year and we're all on lockdown, so we're trying to get messages out any way that we can, and InTouch News is a great way for you to inform the public about any services or business activities that you have going on or events. So I encourage everybody to reach out to InTouch News about sponsorships, things of that nature. Hey, listen, we would even consider you on our show. You got to lean the right way, though. So we'll come back to that a little bit later.
Right, also, the operative word.
One other thing I want to share is, so we kick off with our show. We talk about general politics, things of that nature. But 11 o'clock on this same station, you have a show called The Sole Purpose. It is hosted by Keith and Monica Harris, one of Tampa's power couples. They talk about a lot of issues. One of the things that they talk about a lot are mental issues, things about relationships. So it's a really good show, a good way to put your earbuds in as you're out getting your exercise and you're starting the day. Put your earbuds in and listen to that show as well. Again, The Sole Purpose, hosted by Keith and Monica Harris, comes on this same station at 11 o'clock. Okay, Professor. All right, so we really beat up this election thing.
Yeah, we did.
I don't think the one thing I didn't get clear, and I'm gonna just give you a chance to really talk about this, is I'm trying to figure out. Supreme Court has now ruled, where does this go from here on the legal action side, if you know or have any thoughts about that?
I think it goes back to that other small case, and they've had it in court. Sidney Powell and Linwood, Linwood, have petitioned to the Georgia Supreme Court. I think they're doing it in Arizona. You made mention. No, you didn't make mention. We didn't make mention. Arizona was key as one of the states, at least the state legislature, that joined in to joining this Texas lawsuit, and I think that's key. Because that state has also been in question. We know the John McCain effect. That was a very, I think astute point you pointed out a couple of weeks ago, the swing. And it makes sense,
Yeah.
They love John McCain, but did they really love him to that degree? Could Trump not overcome that because he's such a workaholic? But you said a couple of things, and you are really teaching me how to hone in my active listening and come back to the point. So you start out saying, but the media, this and what we can do and how you get your message out. There's something else about the media and what they did with Hunter Biden. And I'll just start here. Facebook is now being sued by 48 states about being a monopoly. Twitter, Ted Cruz, the Republicans have been giving them the business about censorship. Back in October, the great, and we call him the good.
I don't know if I like when you say you the great. So that feels like a setup.
You quoted NPR in their dismissal of the Hunter Biden thing. When Trump brought it up, you said you like what they said because they said, quote, we're not going to waste our time and our listeners' time with non-stories.
Yes.
Well, it's coincidental that now this investigation that Republicans had been saying had been going on behind the scenes, but nobody wanted to cover it because they knew that it could sway a lot of votes in that fourth quarter that you just used that analysis of this election. So it's interesting that they suppressed it, and that's what people were saying. I can't find it when I query for it, when I search for it on Google. I'm not finding this story. So they were even a little leery about, okay, this may be just a Republican thing. Now, I never believed that because there are other sources that you can use. You have to be a bit clever to get around certain search engines, and Google being such a monopoly. But getting back to Hunter Biden. So, yes, he's been under investigation since 2018, I think they said. That's a long time. That's a long time.
Yeah.
For it to be a non-story.
Right.
It's a non-story when it comes to the election, but he's been under investigation. And now, I don't know if it's quite full 2 years, but let's just say a year and a half.
Okay.
So why is it now you want us to not challenge the election, but that's not what we tell black folk. You tell them systems that are unfair, you challenge it. But in the last segment, you said, no, you don't want to challenge the election system. It's too fragile. So why aren't we challenging this media conglomerate that seems, just coincidentally, they always lean left? Stories they suppress tend to favor Democrats. And the one we're talking about now ties to the election. Because Trump did a really good job in that second debate. Totally blew the first one, but he made Hunter Biden a part of that debate. But people didn't want to deal with that because they called it a non-story. But now we have it. Now they want to talk about it. Now the media is doing damage control because they knew that they had done it wrong. Now they're caught because now the government has said he's under investigation. So now how do you backstep and try to show that you're not biased when you clearly are biased and you hid the story?
So my first thought is I don't know that them being biased is really an issue.
What? You just said the election. Okay.
That's different. That's government action. See, this is where you have to test the Republican principle. Not I don't like the outcome, but I think this is really a test. It's a private business. They get to do what they want to do. And I'll give you a good example. When I became president of Georgia Edgecombe Bar Association in Hillsborough County, there were a number of major law firms without any black lawyers. Okay. So I went marching over there, demanding to talk to somebody. I'm the president. Somebody needs to do something about this. They're like, what's your issue? They're like, we're not a social project. We're a business. We're just making money. And if you can explain to us or our clients demand something different out of us, we'll do something different. But we're just making money. Facebook is a business. And I'm surprised that Republicans would come in and have to order it to do certain things because they don't like the things that this private business, if you don't like Facebook, click off. You don't have to be there.
Well, that's
it's like Fox. It's like Fox News. Let me say this. It's like Fox News. It's silly of me, even though I don't like the slant and some of the stuff. I respect the fact that it's their business and they get to skew whatever it is they want to skew, how they want to skew it. And if I don't like it, turn the channel. That's a basic principle. And I'm surprised Republicans won't embrace their individual right to do that. Now, there's a different question to say, well, is it good for America? Is this how we want things to run? Media has been slanted for eons. Papers are
which
slanted.
Way is the media slanted for eons?
It depends on which media you're looking at. Fox Media is slanted conservative.
And that's one.
Breitbart
the
Media,
rest slant left.
Breitbart is slanted, conservative. I can read out a list of conservative media. The entire universe of talk radio, and I've been on talk radio since 1985 when Rush Limbaugh showed up. It's conservative. I watched him run all the non-conservative off and out of the whole medium.
You talk about small operations, the big operations.
No.
Around that.
Whoa. Hey, it wasn't small. It was Clear Channel with a clear, specific mandate. And I'll go a step further. They were laying the foundation for building up the Fox audience because they took those radio listeners and just slid them over to the TV station channel. So no, it wasn't small operations. It actually happened when Clear Channel came in and said, hey, okay, we're putting on a syndicated show in, this many markets, and here's all you're going to talk about. These five.
Fox and Clear Channel. What about CNBC? What about MSNBC? What about CNN? What about all of those bigger operations lean left. You're talking about two.
No, but they're no longer the big ones. They're not the big. Right. Most people don't get their news on CNBC.
Exactly. They've lost their viewership years ago.
So we're not. So what are we talking about them for? Here's where I'm trying to go with this: is do we respect private businesses' right to decide their business model or not? And if we don't like it, do we then come in and order them? Watch me now. Put in government regulations to make you do something different that we don't like. That doesn't sound very Republican.
But here's the thing. That's not what the lawsuit is. The lawsuit is being a monopoly, not censoring. Twitter is going to be sued for censoring. Facebook is being sued for having a monopoly.
But think about that very idea.
Right.
It's one thing if there are organic things done to give you an advantage that protect you and disallow people to compete against you. That's that. For example, let's take the railroads. The federal government joined with private companies to create railroads. And then certain companies said, hey, we have a railroad monopoly. And the world said, no, 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 no. But you only got that because of your partnership with government to create that environment. Facebook is a organic business built by individuals. I'm always concerned, and I would assume Republicans would be, when the government comes in and says, and I'll use this word, wait a minute, you're too successful. You're beating your competition. You're putting your competitors out of business. We don't like that. I think that's a slippery slope. We don't want to start getting into that. I think that there's certain things we should be concerned about. But I think if that's the way we go about this, why do I build a big company that dominates an industry only to have the government step in and say, well, we don't like that? And this is different than the whole Bell system. Because again, you had government creating the environment for that system to develop. The government in this case, I don't think nearly has much input in the dynamics of it. So the slant of media one way or the other way, hey, that's what the market wants. That's what the market gets.
Man, you read my mind, because my comeback was going to be the antitrust of Ma Bell back in the 70s or early 80s. You were on it, because you didn't see me get my phone.
So you read my notes?
No, I can't. But man, we've been doing this too long, because I'm like, that's always been my illustration. I use it in class. We've been here before. So, okay, I take that. I mean, that makes sense. But it still goes back to, if it's antitrust, is it really fair? Because in the other, you say you have concerns about government going in, but I don't think you have any concerns when government goes in. Like you say, government has to have a part in healthcare. I mean, that's their role. When you education, you say it's a social experience, but government has a role, and government has a role to make sure a company's not too big that it is smothering. It is smothering the voice of half the electorate.
Think that's the case, because the electric has another place to go for its voice. So it's not like you're like the only show in town.
Okay, so
that's kind of what the Ma Bell problem was.
Exactly. Well, and we're talking in the 70s. So technology.
So the fact that they have competitors, and the fact that your competitors have not been, but there's nothing blocking them.
You know what?
Besides the fact, that's the thing that concerns me about. Basically, you're telling Facebook you're too successful. And I just worry about that as a model of how we in America look at businesses. And I think but this is a challenge, I think, to the Republican ideals. And I think it's a remnant of what you're going to get with Trump, is that a lot of the ideals of Republican values have kind of been chunked out the window. And this is what allows government to say, we're for deregulation, but in the areas we want to regulate.
Well, but like you said, a government has its role. So, but let me remind you of another conversation you and I had in the parking lot.
I'm talking to my wife. She reminded me of my conversation. I got to go back to my notes here. Then. What day was that?
What I'm trying to remember, did I say it was Facebook or did I say it was Google? But walking out of the show over a year ago, I said they need to break them up. And you said to me, no, they can't. They're too big. And I said, no, they can break them up to infrastructure and content. I'm looking at the back end. We had this conversation before. I just don't know which one. It was either Facebook or Google.
Well, they're all muddled together, and there's no doubt that the genie's been let out the bottle. And I don't know how, it's kind of like once electricity was created, what you do with it, it's just infinite. And this social media entertainment news blend has become the new successful model, and it feeds into so many other things economically that are so powerful. But I don't know if let's get back to this Hunter Biden deal.
Right, because you never answered. So, because I never posed a question. So I told you what you said to me. I told you what NPR said, and they were really, they were just so adamant about it's a non-story. You guys.
Well, let me. Here's two parts of it, and this is where Donald Trump's awkward way of framing information and questions.
I thought that was you making that noise.
My dog. It's my dog, man. It's my dog, man. He just, I don't know what his deal is this morning, but he is just giving me the business all morning. So, but the issue really is they didn't say there's a DOJ investigation of this with Donald Biden. they said you all said things like what they did with Ukraine was a bad thing, and somebody should look at that. And that's just not enough. Now, what I'm hearing is, and I'll throw this in since you didn't bring it up. I'll throw you a bone. Jimmy Biden has been investigated for
James
some
Biden,
tax.
right.
Jimmy, is it Jimmy, right?
I thought it was James, but go ahead.
Yeah, Jimmy, yeah, about something tax related. No one talks specifically, and here's the crazy part I don't understand is, why didn't Barr, if he wanted to help his buddy Trump out, and he wanted to keep his job, I can't imagine Barr teaming up with the Democrats to help get rid of Joe Biden.
It's not a team. It goes back to what you said, and really what everyone was saying back in 2016 and early 2017 when Trump showed that he was the same guy running. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to say some things. And you said he was just bad for the office. His optics were bad. His choice of words is poor. His level of intellect does not rise to the standard. There were a lot of things, and there were so many people. And if you remember back then, they proudly held on to the term non-Trumpers, anti-Trumpers. What was it?
Never Trumpers.
Never Trumpers. See, they proudly wore that tag until they realized, this guy is a force. If he gets out on that campaign trail, I could be primary. It's going to be a problem. So they slowly went away from that. A couple of them resigned. The Jeff Flakes. I got out of here. I just don't want to deal with this guy. A couple even changed parties, but most of them just went underground. That's what Barr is. We really not.
You think Barr is a never Trumper?
No, I don't think he's a never Trump, but he knows. I think he really feels that, the country would probably be better off if this guy's not here. I'm going to do my job, but I'm also going to kind of turn a blind eye to some things that can probably be problematic for this president. I don't think he teamed up as in a coup that way, but I believe that he's not a full Trump supporter. I don't think he would have voted for Trump. Like I told you, I didn't vote for Trump. So I don't think he's that guy as it pertains to Donald Trump. I think he's doing his job, but I think his inaction, his absence in what's going on, this call for at least do something, dude, with the voter fraud. I mean, there are some things that you could have done if just to show face from a government. You're not his lawyer. That's what Rudy Giuliani is doing in court. But you do have a responsibility to show half the 74 million people that voted for Trump that, we've raised enough concerns. We've shown you that it flipped 6,000 votes. What do you need? 500,000 votes before you get involved? I mean, what's that number? So getting back to the Hunter Biden and the James Biden and the tax evasions, it was all there. Even you just said it. Well, y'all didn't say it right. That's why I never said anything, because you didn't use the right words. But the investigation was going on for a year and a half. And so NPR is complicit that they're purposely denying it because you're trying to tell me, y'all said it was something not done right. You didn't say it.
Well, a couple of things that I know we're getting short on time. This hour just flies by. My sheet, my stuff. I think I'm at the top one. But let me point this out though: is the FBI, DOJ, they investigate a lot of people, and I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay. Go ahead. Bring the caller in. Let's bring the caller in and let's. Good morning, caller. You're on In Touch News Radio, reality radio, where everybody can be a star. You're on Straight Up the Middle with Professor Tony Seabrook. Morning, caller.
Speed bump, huh? Because Ted Cruz was my guy. I voted for Ted Cruz. I mean, I'm sorry. He wasn't my pick in the primary when the Republicans were out there when there was 17 of them. Ted Cruz was my guy. But here's the thing. If you've been watching the show and maybe didn't hear me say it, I never said President Obama wasn't my president. I'm ex-military, so I believe in the chain of command, and whoever wins, wins. Now, in this case, I believe there was clear evidence of fraud, and I believe Trump won. Now, if Biden is inaugurated in January, he'll be President Biden. I'm not that guy, but I'm certainly not going to know he won. It's kind of like that card game. I think Clint's played some cards. He's such a straight late guy. Otherwise, he doesn't drink. Hopefully, he plays some cards. You ever play cards with someone?
Listen, man,
you drop
my card game is strong. Let me just put that out there.
So let me use this analogy. You ever play cards with someone who dropped, but you caught them, but they pushed the cards in the deck? I had 12. I had 12. But you can't prove it because it's all in the deck. That's where we are with this vote.
If I have 3 aces in my hand, I know you didn't have 12. You can't have 12.
Exactly. So to the caller, that's why. I mean, so let me be serious about this. Trump does not impress me. He's not a statesman. No, he's not a politician. But I am clear, and I believe we have a President Trump because people fell out of love with Obama in his second term. Policies led to a President Trump.
So I'll go a step further, Professor. Here's what happened. America was founded by a bunch of old white guys. It was created to benefit those old white guys. And the idea and the plan was for old white guys to always run this country. And when the reality that, wait a minute, other people are going to have to share in not only the benefits, but in the decision-making of this country, I think there was a rumbling in people's stomachs. And that's what Trump tied back into. We can restore America's greatness. And I think the word greatness, if you just change the words to whiteness, you get what the feeling was. Now, I'm not going to say it's out and out racism. That people just felt uncomfortable. They just were uncomfortable with the drastic change. And I'll give you this point, and I see that we're short. And I want to thank the caller for calling in. And I appreciate you listening. Please continue to listen and call in. But my neighbor got a new car. He's 84 years old. And he went to a class on the car first. And they got his cell phone synced up, and it's got all the bells and whistles, all this kind of stuff. And I went out to talk to him the other day, and he was furious. And he said, I can barely drive this car. It tries to stop on its own. I go to change lane, the steering wheel rattles and dings and beeps at me. There's some lady that always comes on and starts talking about stuff. If I get anywhere near it, my phone syncs up to the car and I can't get a call. He hates the technology of the car. And he said, if I knew this, I would have just kept my old car and kept driving it. It wasn't that bad. And it's in my mind, I was thinking, he misses the old car, kind of like some people miss the old America, when everybody kind of stayed in their place. Families were supposed to be what they were. People lived in the street, and there was a predictability to that. I think there's an undercurrent. I think there's a major, major undercurrent of that in the popularity of Donald Trump. And he tied into that use of the word, make America great again, employed, we're going to return to something. And then he just suddenly dialed into some of that. I think that was probably one of the major components. I also think Hillary was just a bad candidate. She was a bad candidate. She really was. And maybe really her fault. I don't think Joe Biden was a great. Oh my! Don't you start playing that music back in the studio. Turn that off. I don't think Joe Biden was a great candidate. Trump was just a really bad candidate. Professor, closing comment while we close out this morning, real quick.
You know, this goes back. Our arguments go back. Our discussion goes back to what I said last week, and it's a phrase. You know, we talk about this. You defend the Democrats. I look at and support the Republicans. But the United States has an issue, a very hypocritical stance with the world. We want to tell everybody else how to be nice and run things the right way. You know, you don't cheat. You know, you don't install a president. But we have these things showing. Our gray hairs are now being exposed. You know how we like to put that down on it? We've been exposed, and the world is watching. We like to say that in a different stance that kind of warrants applause. The world's watching. But
wow, I can't. You know what? General Goering said that very same argument during the Nuremberg trials to America. How dare you question how we treat the Jews and what you did to the Indians and Native Americans and African Americans in your country? How dare you question how we treat our people. Be that as it may, we'll leave it at. Listen, I thank everybody for calling out. Shout out to RJS Law down in Riverview, Florida, for listening in this morning. I appreciate you guys down there. Hope all is well. And listen, we're out of here. Catch us back next week on In Touch News Radio, reality radio, where everybody else can be a star. See you then.